Everyone, Sean O'Connor here from Macabre Daily, and I have none other than Uncle Creepy himself with us today, the incredible, incomparable. I just called him the most handsome man in horror, and he was kind enough to say that's accurate. Steve Barton, ladies and gentlemen.
You have good taste, Sean, might I add.
No one's ever said that.
I don't know who exactly other than you calls me handsome. When I get naked, my wife runs upstairs. I mean, I don't know.
Where do we go from that level? Where do we go from here?
That's just it, man. Everything in my life is that level. You know, it's like I think the humor comes a bit from insecurity. You know, it's very much a defense mechanism, you know, whenever not that I'm nervous or anything, but it's always easier for me to try. I don't know if I succeed in being funny than just wondering in my head, am I saying the right things and blah, blah, blah.
Well, this is the second time we're speaking, and I can tell you you're definitely funny, so you don't have to worry about it.
Again, you have good taste, sir.
Lot of things going on.
Yeah.
We have, today is February 4th, and it happens to be George Romero's birthday. Steve has an incredible relationship with George. It's very sweet. We'll talk about that as the interview progresses. We'll save that for the end because I think that'll be a sweet, nice wrap up. But that kind of kicks off where I want to start with, which is, of course, a comedy of tragedies. This is Steve's memoir, which honestly, came about almost by accident. Tell us a little bit about how it actually almost didn't start because it wasn't supposed to.
Well, you know, Sean, first the earth cooled and then the dinosaurs came. And then, no, seriously, I grew up in a really weird way, and I didn't realize it was weird until I started seeing how others were growing up. It's like as soon as I got old enough to go to my friends' houses unaccompanied, you know, I would be like, wow, these motherfuckers live like the Brady Bunch in my house. Is like Monty Python's Flying Circus. This is fucking nuts. And but yeah, I that was my normal, man. And because of that and a lot of other reasons, you know, I guess they say if you believe in God that he has a plan. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking in my case, or she, or it, or whatever.
Cthulhu, exactly.
Yeah, but you know, I went through some shit, and my story's not unique. Everybody goes through some shit. I mean, everyone else's stuff is no more important and no less important than anyone else's.
Yeah.
And I've always been very cognizant of that fact. And because I had so many demons rattling around in this beautiful dome right here, I decided that I was, after like 46 years, that I was just going to, all right, I need to get this out of my head, you know? So I was doing the psychological thing, man. I was just typing away. And because I wanted to get it out of my head, I had to open up a lot of doors that I had kept long sealed shut. And I got into detail that I had never gotten into detail with before. I made sure I remembered every single thing that I could about certain situations just to exercise them in a way, you know? And so I put it out, put it on the page, and I just kept typing away. And I got about halfway through my life. And as sometimes life does, you know, a hand grenade is thrown on your life and it's time for huge changes. Yeah. And I'm also no stranger to that. So I ended up moving from California back east, and I met Danielle Martin, who I ended up marrying, which is a huge difference maker, especially to anyone who knows me. I never even thought of doing anything like that, but you know, she's a very special person to me, and I do want to spend the rest of my life with her. And she has a really nice butt, and that helps. But No, one day I was sitting here working and she walks over and she's like, "Hey, you know that thing you were writing?" And I'm like, well, "Yeah, the fucking life stuff." And she's like, "Yeah, that." I'm like, "Well, yeah. What about it?" She goes, "Can I read it?" I'm like, "You already married me. Don't you think it's too late for that?" You know, and but
No take backs.
yeah, I mean, she knows everything about me. I was like, "Well, why?" And she's like, "I'm just curious." So I sent it to her and she went upstairs and intermittently I'd hear her laughing or I'd hear her crying and I would hold my head and go, "What the fuck did I just do?" And eventually she came back downstairs and the first thing I did was look at her hands and there was no divorce paperwork. So score, got away with one. And she sat down across from me right where I'm sitting right now. And she said, "You can't delete this. You can't burn this. This isn't something that you should just flush away." And I'm like, "Well, why?" Because I never really considered anything. I didn't start to write a book. I was talking to me. It was me. It was me getting out all this shit. It wasn't for public consumption. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind. And I asked her why, and she's like, "There are things that you write about in this book that I've seen other people write about, but I've never seen it put quite the way you do." And she goes, "I think this book might have the possibility to help people and help them feel less alone." And that kind of blew my mind because, again, not considering that at all. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to finish it then. So it took another 2 years. And I had to say to myself, man, if I was writing this as a book from the start, I probably wouldn't have gone as in depth, in detail with some of the things that I did. So I was like, well, fuck, do I go back and remove some of that? And ultimately, the lazy person in me took over and goes, it's too much work. And so I didn't take away anything, but what I did was I added to it to retool it a little bit so it would read like, I guess, a book, or at least having the beginning of a conversation or something like that. And I finished it from start to finish. The book took me about 4 years, maybe a little over 4 years. And then I was going to do what I was going to do. I was going to self-publish it because I didn't think anybody would fucking want to read this nonsense, right? And my friend Josh Milliken, who had succeeded me in Dread Central when I had left, he was one of the only people there that really tried to revere what I created. And I always appreciated that. So Josh and I had always remained friends. And when he saw I finished my book, he's like, "Can I read it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Why?" So I sent it to him and he's like, "Well, what are you doing with this?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to put it out, self-publish it. Maybe somebody will find it. Maybe they won't." And he's like, "No way, dude. You need to let me send this to my publisher." And I'm like, "Okay, fine." And they called me the next day and they're like, "Yeah," they're like, "Dude, we need to put this out." And I'm like, "Did you read it?" And they're like, "No, but you wrote it." And I'm like, "I think you probably better read it because it might not be what you're expecting, man. This isn't me telling just industry stories. I mean, of course that stuff is in there, but this was me. This was everything." So they agreed to read it. And 2 weeks later, they called me back and they're like, "Okay, now it's important that we put it out."
See? Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay," and I was terrified. John, I ain't gonna lie. This is probably the most...
It's very personal. There's a lot of stuff in there, but this book has the power to help a lot of people because of what you've gone through and what you've overcome and the experiences that you've had, good and bad. All of that is there. B, this is a love letter to your wife. It comes through. So I think that's kind of nice. C,
even though she showed up after all this shit, it could have been nice 20 years ago when I was a little firmer or something, but whatever.
Look, you and I both know the versions of ourselves 20 years ago probably couldn't have held on to the women that have changed our life, So and lastly, see, you get all that great stuff, the industry stuff that's in there, which full transparency is probably what is going to draw a person to the book.
Mhm.
But the magic of it and what's special about it is you get all of those other components as well. It is a deeply moving story. I told you the first time we spoke that when I closed the cover, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to grab a beer with you, and I wanted to give you a hug. Those things, because yeah, I mean, you have lived a life. um I think what's most impressive, if I give my dime store opinion, are the things that you experienced, and it set you back. I mean, you went down for an 8 count, time and time again, but you always got up, and you never had a woe is me attitude. You just kind of, I think it was because of your childhood. And what you just alluded to is I kind of thought it was normal. So that getting back up after getting knocked down is very much Steve Barton,
Yeah.
if
I
I may.
mean, thank you. Listen, being happy is easy, man. When things are going good and everything's all right and you're laughing and it's a great time, that's all easy, but it's not everything. I found, at least for me, that the more exciting times in my life are the times when I have been knocked down and I have been flat on my ass. And the only thing I could do is look around me and see these fucking walls and go, how the hell do I get out of this time? And I realized then that it was those moments of absolute heartache and chaos, where I was able to make some of my most important decisions. And I believe that those moments ended up dictating who I would become and added to my character. So I've really learned to embrace the bad, because you don't get those chances too often in your life.
Yeah.
And you know what? At that point, when you've been broken down that hard in that many pieces, you don't really have much to lose, you
It's
know?
true. It's true.
So I grew up with nothing. I lived the majority of my life with nothing. I've never done anything purely for money or fame or anything like that, really. I've only done stuff that I wanted to try to make a difference. I mean, I'm somebody that I felt so alone almost my entire life that I created things to feel like I belonged somewhere, like Dread Central. And I opened up the floodgates and I'm like, give me your misfit toys, come hang with me, because I too am a fucking misfit. And that was very important to me. I've only, what, when you grow up experiencing a lot of sadness, and this isn't woe is me, but the only way to balance that is to experience happiness. And I take a lot of happiness out of making people happy, out of making them smile, out of making them just feel good about themselves.
Steve,
I'll buy somebody a gift out of nowhere just because they're there. I'll text someone out of nowhere just to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I love you. Don't forget that. And that's just me.
but you created a community, and that's something. I mean, you really did. The Dread Central days, you ran the message boards, and you did create a community.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to what you just said. You had experienced trauma and sadness. You kind of knew what the stakes were, and here you were. You're like the misfit toys. Come on in. Come on in. And you created this beautiful community, and you really did something. I mean, you created something unique, and it still lives on. And your influence still lives on. Now it's in different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you'll agree with me that horror people they kind of get the side eye. You tell someone, maybe you have the tattoos, or maybe it's the way you dress, or maybe you're just at a barbecue or party and you're like, yeah, my thing is horror movies, and people go back on their heels a bit. But and I know by being exposed to this community, it's the most loving, accepting, gentle people in the world. It's those rom-com motherfuckers that are savages.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. And I think there's a big reason for that. I think a lot of the reason for that is horror specifically is named after a feeling. You can feel horror. It's
Great
an
point.
emotion, you know? And a lot of us, we've grown up in different difficult ways. It doesn't matter if you were rich or you were poor. Every set of situation comes with its own set of problems. So to be able to just say, hey, I like the darker side of shit, you know, and be able to find that crowd and embrace that crowd and become part of that crowd was very important to me in terms of just finding myself. I mean, in this world, you have to find your tribe or you're going alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, very much so.
I was always of the mindset from a very early point in my life that help wasn't coming and I was the backup plan.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So if I wanted to live, I needed to figure out how. No one ever taught me. Anything I've learned, I pretty much taught myself. I learned in the infancy of the internet when I was a Fangoria message board moderator that Tony Timpone gave me my start. I learned how to start doing HTML, and I learned all of this shit that I knew I would need if I wanted to further explore and expand on these ideas that I had. And I put that to good use with Dread Central. And it was just, you know, and then that brought its own challenges. I had to learn to be a journalist, you know. I don't fucking know how to write. You know what I mean?
True.
No one taught me how to do that. And all of a sudden, I was like, well, shit. Now I got to start trying to be able to put together cohesive sentences for people. And I found that the best way I could do that was just to write like I speak. And when it came to staffing up Dread Central, I never went to writers. I went to voices. I knew that I could correct anyone's grammar and make something read right. But I also knew that that isn't everything. You need to have a unique voice. You need to have a unique perspective. You can't grow that. That just has to be there innately.
Yeah.
And so I found people with strong personalities and of who liked this and who liked that, who hated this and who hated that. And I brought them all together. And at one point I had like 21 people working with me at Dread Central. And I always say working with me because even though I created it, I don't want to play the boss card. That just isn't me. I want to work with people. It's the same reason why when after a show that I'm attending ends, I'm always the one jumping in and hanging out with the crowd instead of leaving or going to the hotel room or some party that's going on somewhere. I want to be around the people who love the same things that I do, who feel the same way that I do. You know, anytime you're out in the street and you're a horror fan, even if you're in a fucking supermarket and somebody walks by with an Evil Dead t-shirt on, you're going to give each other the nod.
Yep.
And you know, that's my people right there. And you, even though you don't have to say a fucking word, it's that 1 second exchange that lets you know that there's another cool person around you should shit go down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And also you just made someone's day by saying, hey, nice tea.
Yeah.
Love the movie, you know?
You know, there's a lot of derision and a lot of awfulness around right now. And it's so hard to know when to speak up and to know when to shut up, for lack of a better term. And it's a tightrope all the time.
It is.
And all we could do is be kind to one another. You know, if someone has a different opinion, good. If we all had the same opinion, shit would be boring.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's allowed to feel and act however they want to feel and act. They've earned that as a person, and you need to respect that. You know, and it's just I found that, especially from my dad, who was a fucking sterling example of how I will never choose to be. I found you can do a lot more with kindness and love than you can with hatred and vitriol.
It's a great message. It's a great message, Steve. I want to talk about the book for a second. I want to circle back to you're very modest and humble, and that's a great quality. But you have a very distinct voice, and it comes through in your writing.
Thank you.
People are going to grab this book. And by the way, The review is at macabredaily.com. Right below here, you're going to see the link. You'll also see the link on where to purchase it, and I highly recommend that you do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take that back. I insist that you do. It's a
I do too, damn it.
right? It's a fantastic read. But the point I want to make is it's so descriptive. Now, I grew up in Bayside, Queens. You grew up in Brooklyn. But I'm reading, anyone from the tri-state area, by the way, is everyone should read this book, but people who are from the Northeast, specifically the city, Brooklyn, Queens, boy, are they going to enjoy this book. I was reading passages and I felt like I could feel the heat coming off the asphalt. I could smell the pizza coming through the pizza window. I wasn't going inside. I was getting it through the pizza window. Those are, I miss those. But it's all there, like the flavors and the different characters and the different attitudes are all there. And please take this as a compliment. I know it's a different circumstance. There's some similarities. It's a different circumstance, but it felt like the beginning of Goodfellas, where you're immediately dropped into the neighborhood and you get a sense of character and you kind of like you're learning it on the fly, but it's also vibrant and alive. That is your writing. So I really wanted to commend you. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. Even the parts that were devastating are so well written. Those, like I said, those were the parts where I just wanted to give you a big hug. But you hang with this read, and it's so incredibly satisfying. And I'll circle back to the point that this book can help people because of what you went through and because of how you came out the other side. So,
I think the message of the book is my message to everybody. It's that you don't have to live a certain way and live up to anybody's expectations except for your own. You are the one ultimately who has to pull your strings.
Yeah.
No one can tell you how your food tastes, and you can do anything you want if you just put your mind to it. Dude, I'm an asshole. I'm a street kid from Brooklyn, and I've helped change at least horror history for the better.
Yeah,
in a lot
very
of
much so.
And if I can do that, anyone can. You just got to find what you love and celebrate it and not let anyone under any circumstances take away your passion, take away your love, kill your fucking happiness, because that's what people do. People are inherently miserable and misery loves company. Yeah. So you don't have to listen to them, because you know what? Those people that bitch at you, those people who tell you that you're not going to be anything, that you can't possibly do this or you can't possibly do that, 9 times out of 10, these are the same people that forgot how to dream. And what they are is jealous of you because you still have that drive to become anything you want, and they've just become complacent.
I agree. I do want to talk about George. I want to talk about your experiences with him, but I do want to point out that your message of kindness and inclusion, that's paramount. This is the worst analogy that I made in quite some time. You are like this bug zapper, and you're attracting all of this talent and all of these people who love horror, but you're not zapping. You're zapping them with kindness. Oh boy, I told you this one was going to be bad, but it's true. You are, you know what was right in front of me? You're a lighthouse. That's what I meant. You're a beacon.
I'm fine with being a bug zapper, man. I always said I was the proud representative of the lowest common denominator. So why can't I be a motherfucking bug zapper, man?
I think we just found the title for the article in the interview.
Yeah.
Steve Barton,
motherfucking bug zapper.
You're a lighthouse and a beacon that draws in talent and, creativity, and you put it to incredible good use. And now you're putting it to even more good use. You were a producer on Terrifier 2. You have, let me make sure, Steve, forgive me for a second as I look aside here. I want to make sure I get it right. The Death of Snow White and Laugh coming out, of which you're a producer as well. There's exciting things on the horizon.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
There's a lot more projects I have coming up that haven't been announced.
Well, I'm going to bug you. And see, I'm going to bug you. And we'll get back here and talk about them. But let's just take the last couple of minutes and let's talk about George and celebrate George on his birthday.
There's a lot I could say about George. George was a friend. George was a brother. George was an absolute maniac. Um, he was just an old hippie, man. That's who he was. He's talked like this, man, and everything was bad about, and he was like a walking jazz song, and I loved him for that because you never knew what kind of brilliance was going to come out of him. And he taught me so much, both him and Sid Haig, but George in particular. They say don't meet your heroes. I mean, here was a guy who basically raised me without ever even knowing me. And once he knew me, he embraced me and he kept me close. And, to me, that's like Bigfoot deeming you cool enough to know he exists. And he never bought into what a legend he truly was. And he always carried himself with a great deal of humility. And, I would see him at so many shows. And even though the shows were over, technically, he would stay 2 hours later, whatever it took to make sure everybody got to meet him, got to have a moment with him, and got something signed with him. He didn't care about the clock. He cared about the person in front of them. And he made that person feel like they were the only person in the room each and every time. So I said to him one day, George, I mean, it's 3 hours after the show ended. Why do you do that, man? And he said to me, Steve, you got to understand something, man. These people that wait here for me, they say it's an honor to meet me. I say it's an honor to meet them. And that's why I will stay until every single one of them gets what they need with a huge ass smile on my face, because this could be it for them. Hell, it could be it for me. And why not make this moment something that they could remember and consider special? And I really took that to heart because it made absolute sense. And that's who George was. And I try to carry that with me everywhere. And the other bit of good advice, priceless advice he gave me, was we had just recorded the commentary track for Survival of the Dead, which never made it onto the Blu-ray, but it's hopefully one day it'll be available because it's
out
fun.
there.
I mean, we started talking about the movie, but of course we got drunk during the whole thing. And by the end of the commentary, we're talking about Led Zeppelin and blah, blah, blah. And it ended and we're just sitting on his couch and we're both 3 sheets to the wind. But he goes, I want to be serious for a moment, man. And I'm like, what? He goes, you got to make me a promise, Steve. I'm like, of course, George. What do you want? He goes, I don't care what the fuck it is you do with your life, man. I don't care if it's planting a garden or making a movie. You got to promise me that if you start something, you fucking finish it. Because if you don't, you're only going to be spending the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if I did finish it. And I promised him there that I would finish everything that I started. And you know what? If you go through the book and you see where I started, I think to appreciate the journey, you need to know where I come from in order to appreciate how I got here to this place. But in every one of those instances, it was me that finished what I started on my own terms.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of that. And that's something I will always love him for.
You should be. You should be. I'm just the accomplishments that you have under your belt. It's incredible. And it's not even remotely close to being done. So excited for the future for you. So excited for 2025 for you.
Yeah, man. I'm hoping things finally come together. You know what? There are varying degrees of success to people, and success is what you think it is. But for me, it's not money. It's not power. It's not fame. It's going to bed at night and putting my head on the pillow and saying to myself, I did everything I could today to try and make a difference as best as I could. And as long as I could do that, to me, that is success. That is my definition of success, that I lived my life the best way I could have that day, both for myself and everyone who was around me.
It's a great message. It's a great message. I highly encourage every single person to go get A Comedy of Tragedies. The stories that you have with George and with Sid Haig. I mean, you have stories with icons of horror, of which you are now one yourself, by the way. And then you're going to be like,
I don't know about that, but
you are. But you have these incredible stories. But the ones with Sid and the ones with George, they're so sweet and endearing. They really touched me. So anyone who's into horror needs to go get this book and check it out. We will talk again, sir.
Absolutely.
You've got so many exciting things that we spoke about, and some that you teased and said you don't even know the half of it. I want the secrets.
Oh, maybe offline. I'll tell you some stuff. Okay?
All right. But when they actually come out into the public, we get you right back on here and we'll get it out to everyone.
Absolutely. Sean, thank you so much for reading the book and taking the ride and taking the time to hang out with me for a little while today.
Thank you. It was a blast.
All right, man.
And you're a good hang. So yeah, can't wait to do it again.
All right. What you don't know is I'm pantsless too. So
well, I would look.
There's a good hang happening right now, Sean.
I was hoping.
All right, go away.
Bye, everyone. Sean O'Connor from Macabre Daily and the incredible Steve Barton.
Take care.